Josh Heupel gave his first in-season weekly press conference Monday to speak to the media ahead of Tennessee's matchup against Syracuse and revealed a lot of things about the Vols that we have to discuss now. What are the standout things of what he said? That is 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And I always say this is for Dave Hooker. You guys can hashtag DH in the message boards, as we hope he gets well soon. I don't have the soundboard that Dave Hooker has, which is how we use Cooper Mays to tee us off on the 4 Downs. And because of that, I do a Cooper Mays impression. That's how I like to do this. So we're diving in now. Here's my Cooper Mays impression. We go from, we start 4 Downs with a request from Cooper Mays, which is, Cooper Mays here, hit like and subscribe. That's right. Cooper Mays has asked you guys to hit like and subscribe right now. Now we bring up the downs on things Josh Heupel said at the press conference. Coop here. First down. Boo Carter expected to be out on the field. We kind of thought this was going to happen. We didn't know how it was all going to play out, but Josh Heupel confirmed it for us yesterday. He said he anticipates Boo Carter playing on Saturday. Heupel adds, quote, "For all of us during the course of the week, it's still learn it, earn it, and taking a job and improving every day." Very vague, but as we're gathering, there's no more talk of Boo Carter not being a regular starter for Tennessee. It looks like Tennessee is going to rely on him heavily this year. Excuse me. Tennessee's going to rely on him heavily. Cooper Mays here. Second down. Josh Heupel made a revealing comment, and something I feel similar about too, which is he was asked about offensive line chemistry. Because as you know, Tennessee has to replace 4 starters on the offensive line, including Cooper Mays, by the way. They are working between William Satterwhite and Sam Pendleton at center. One of them will probably play center. The other will probably play guard. Then you got Jesse Perry, Wendell Moe Jr. also in the running in the rotation to play guard. The tackles will be Lance Hurd and I believe David Sanders Jr. at right tackle. Lance Hurd is the only returning starter. Heupel says he feels good about the offensive line chemistry, seeing it in the meeting room and on the practice field. But he also said something else that applies to the young receivers as well, because he also says the young receivers have been super mature since they started in January, and that he's got great trust in the receivers. Tennessee has to replace all 3 receivers from last year too. Their 2 starting wideouts, Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, and their starting slot receiver in Squirrel White. Now, I have told you guys for a while that I think the receiver unit will be better this year than it was last year, because the 3 leading receivers, while they're all gone, none of them were 100%. Brew McCoy, you love him. He was supposed to be a guy who dictates coverage, but he was coming back from a broken leg and just had lost a huge step. Dante Thornton was probably the best. He was very good when he would at getting up yards per reception at 25.4 yards per reception, but he was also coming back from a season-ending injury. And Squirrel White was a slot receiver playing with a separated shoulder half the year. So the only returning receiver with the most production is Chris Brassel, who will be the number 2 wideout, who had 29 catches for 333 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. The number 1 wideout will be Mike Matthews. I believe Mike Matthews will be better than Brew McCoy. He just needed a year to learn the system. And I also believe because of injuries, Braylon Taylor will be better than Boo Carter, who also just needed a year to learn the system. So Heupel talks about the touting of receivers. And with that, despite the experience issue, I think the receivers will be better. But Heupel gave a revealing quote when it came to the offensive line that I think applies to both the receivers and the quarterbacks, which is this. Quote, "You guys keep talking about all the young players and new players, but we've had a lot of time on task with them at this point, so we feel good about them." That is key, and I'm very big on that too. While they don't have starting in-game experience, everybody that we're talking about has been in the system working with it since the spring of 2024. So, with that in mind, I mean, outside of Joey Aguilar, but he's experienced, he's not a young player. But the quote-unquote young players that we're talking about have been working with this offense for a year and a half now. They should be very familiar with it. So while there's not a lot of experience starting, the talent is there, and they are familiar with the system, and it's not like they haven't seen some SEC competition. So with all that in mind, I think they should be okay, and I think the lack of experience shouldn't be a big deal going into this year. We'll see. I think the offensive line will have more growing pains than the receivers are, but overall, things should really take off by the middle of the year, and it should be good enough to get them past this game against Syracuse. Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down. Everybody's been healthy in the passing game. That's another point Josh Heupel made. That's one that we have to stick with because he said that last week, but last week also Chris Brazel's charges were dismissed. And Josh Heupel, that's a big thing because now everybody that he wants to use as his primary targets in the passing game, they're all there. That includes Miles Kitzelman. He said this yesterday, by the way. Miles Kitzelman is the main tight end. Ethan Davis is the complimentary backup tight end. And then Chris Brazel, Mike Matthews, and Braylon Staley at the receiver spot. Boo Carter being the other option at slot with Braylon Staley coming out at times, I think is a big deal. The only issue will be the other wideout, but I believe that Amari Jefferson, I've changed on this. I used to believe it was one of the freshmen, but I now believe Amari Jefferson will be the other wideout to step in when Mike Matthews or Chris Brazel need a break. And Boo Carter will be the one to fill in for Braylon Staley. I think that'll be the 5 receiver rotation with Matthews, Staley, and Brazel, the 3 main guys. But it is a big deal that everybody's healthy, and Heupel said everybody's out there. That is, again, you can't undersell how important that is. 4 downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. 4th down coming up next.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down. 4th down is this. No official backup quarterback to Joey Aguilar. Josh Heupel was asked, who will be the backup quarterback to Joey Aguilar? And he's between George McIntyre and Jake Merklinger. And he said, you'll find out on Saturday. Josh Heupel's not releasing a depth chart for this game. Now, I could go on about that, and maybe I will later in the week. But just for this, I would have to say that Josh Heupel not releasing a depth chart is kind of silly, but I'll also say that I don't know if he knows who the backup quarterback is going to be yet. I think that I'm not so sure there's not a little bit of politicking in this because he's not entirely sure who the backup quarterback will be. We're going to have to find that out, but I do think Josh Heupel doesn't know for sure who the backup quarterback will be. And I think that's why he's saying it. I don't think it's gamesmanship on that part, but we're going to see. I will say at the very least that it kind of stands out that Josh Heupel hasn't named his backup quarterback yet. But again, we'll find out. We'll see how this all goes. We don't know how this is all going to play out in the end. I want to address a quick funny comment real quick, which is that who was it that said it? Steve Sullivan says the movie Big Daddy is Syracuse's only claim to fame. All right, want to know something funny about that? I have a weird memory, but that in that movie, it came out in the summer of '99 as a P-Back Prime. Love that name. Says, did Big Daddy come out before or after Tennessee's last ever natty? It came out after, funny enough. It came out in the summer of '99. And Adam Sandler says at the beginning, I'm having a hard time. Syracuse is 0-3. They never started 0-3 in the 90s. So I don't know when Syracuse was 0-3 and when that movie is supposed to take place, but that's a flaw in the movie because Syracuse never started out 0-3 in the 90s. I'm going through the whole decade now, even in 98, which you would assume this came on the heels of 98 when they were filming the movie. Syracuse started 0-2, which included a loss to Tennessee. But they never started 0-3 in the 90s. So Big Daddy was wrong on that. Just want to point out they were wrong. They started, as a matter of fact, in 98, they started 0-1, but then they beat Michigan the next week. A Tom Brady-led Michigan team in 98. So, no, Big Daddy is wrong. It was inaccurate. Syracuse was never 0-3. In the fall of 98, while Tennessee was winning the national championship, another funny stat, that was when Waterboy was coming out. That was when Waterboy came out. The inspiring movie of a socially disabled person abandoned by his father who found love for football playing linebacker. I'm sorry, you could make Waterboy, if you said the story of Waterboy publicly to somebody, you could make it sound like a very serious Oscar-winning movie. You really could. A man with a social disability abandoned by his father finds talent playing football and becomes one of the most beloved college football players in history. I mean, guys, you could literally do another version of Waterboy and make it a serious movie. I mean, it's Forrest Gump, if you really think about it. They just made it Forrest Gump. But yeah, that's my interesting take on Adam Sandler movies.